Audio made possible by www.jackettome.com. Warning. The following has suggestive content that is not suitable for some listeners. Audio Fanfiction Productions presents Wide Awake. Fanfiction written by Angscata003. Fanfiction inspired by the Twilight Saga written by Stephanie Meyer. Chapter 52. Fated Failure Fortune Cookies.
Edward's point of view. October was full of busy assignments, and really fucking annoying praise. Bella went in the closet. Hence, it was with big smiles that Alice, and Esme fawned over Bella's accomplishments and shoved all my shit aside in the closet for hers. Esme didn't even care that we were now referring to the closet and the entire room as ours. She was too happy about her progress to really give a shit. Carlisle was another story. Happy was the understatement of the year regarding Daddy C's reaction to our decision, or more specifically, my decision, to enter the medical field. At first, he'd been confused and skeptical, a lowbrow stare and slouching spectacles, as he regarded me dubiously, but then, when he realized that I was, in fact, totally fucking serious, he was speechless for about 10 minutes, and then I couldn't get the fucker to shut his goddamn mouth. Apparently, by going into medicine, in any form, I was following in the footsteps of generations of Cullen men. His eyes were alight, as he reminisced about his meaty school days, the late nights, the hard work, the professors, who molded his opinions and views, the tests, the essays, the drunken nights spent pretending that he was already an MD, for the sake of getting laid. I was regaled. And that's not a word anyone will often hear me use, because it's fucking flowery and uptight. Then he'd gotten serious, and had told me not to get my hopes up, seeing as how my record didn't make college aspects look promising at all. I busted ass. Bella had busted hers. We'd shamelessly sent in two of the most depressingly fucked up and pitiful college application essays ever. I probably ought to have felt guilty about using my extremely personal and traumatic past for the sake of getting accepted, but I refused to feel that way. It was about fucking time something good came out of that shit. Thanksgiving wasn't anything like last year's. Bella made a fucking huge and delicious feast, but she allowed Esme and Alice to help, though I had to hear her bitch more than once about the most ridiculous shit. Apparently, there was a certain way to cut vegetables, and a temper tantrum when Alice tried to use the electric mixer to mash the potatoes. She was so fucking cute when she wrinkled her nose behind their backs and worked around them, cursing lumps and gummy textures. Rosalie and Em came home for the holiday, and it was so goddamn uncomfortable that I nearly feigned some kind of flesh-eating bacteria to get out of it. Rosalie hated my fucking guts. She went about admitting it openly to the whole room of people, but though she might appear bitchy and rude to any casual observer, our small circle knew better. Rosalie had been in Bella's shoes at one point in time, and had somehow managed to invest herself emotionally in the outcome of my fucked up decisions, so I just let that shit go, and hoped she'd see how much better things were. Before she and Emmett left, Rosalie had looked back at me leaning in the doorway, and sent me a look that clearly said, "Fine, motherfucker. But you fuck this shit up one more time, then your balls are mine." I winked at her, smirking as I closed the door. Christmas was interesting. I'd never been a big player in all the holiday bullshit, and it felt like I was being thrust into something I clearly wasn't ready for. I begged Bella to help me find gifts for everyone in the house. And by beg, I mean that I cornered her in the shower, got her right on the edge of coming and screaming my name, and bargained orgasms for gift tips. New Year's was yet another loud and flashy fireworks showdown by the river. It must have been an even better show than last year. No one even noticed that Bella and I had snuck away to the gazebo to make out, before, during, and long after the countdown. When February came, and Bella began checking the mailbox obsessively for news from the college, I kept trying to tell her that it was very possible that they'd taken one look at our shit and laughed their asses off. I didn't want her to be disappointed should my shitty luck rear its ugly head. Bella continued making goals and meeting them. The first being going to school for an entire day, without her hoodie. The second was her moving up 2 rows in her calculus class, since her current position behind my hair needs its own fucking area code. Stanley made it impossible to see the board. She sat next to Cheney. When she met me at lunch that day, she had a serious look on her face, and when I asked her what was wrong, she only replied, "That dick keeps asking me for pens." It didn't take very long for our waiting to turn stagnant, her little feet carrying her to the mailbox each day. She tried to appear nonchalant, making casual talk as I followed her with wary eyes. She'd even open it without looking, staring into my eyes, as she talked like she wasn't completely fucking focused on what was inside that hollow hunk of aluminum. The third week of February, she stood by the box, and opened it, tapping the tab with her finger, as her mouth moved. Then her eyes darted down and her words suddenly stopped, her hand emerging with 2 envelopes. Her eyes were so fucking wide, that I thought they might pop out of her head. Then we had this battle of, "No, you open yours first," as we stood in the middle of the yard. It would have been funny if my stubbornness were any match for hers. It wasn't. But then again, when I flashed the acceptance letter in front of her face, it was totally worth all that bullshit. After all, if they'd accept a fuck-up like me, my girl was a shoo-in apparently. They agreed, and Bella squealed so loudly that I think my eardrums will still be recovering long after we graduate from the motherfucker. But, yeah, I got a blowjob that night. Good times. February 28th. Important day. Fucking epic day. I'd be a liar if I said that I didn't have it clearly marked on my school planner. There was a little red circle around the small, black 28. I hid it from Bella because it made me feel like a motherfucking pervert, but in all honesty, I'd been counting down the days. There was another mark much darker 1 week from today. We'd seen it coming for over a month now, had known that it was barreling toward us, had been just fucking ignoring it like we were both thinking about it at night, when we went to bed. It loomed over our heads like a black cloud, following us through our days, like a death sentence. Fuck, I hated being dramatic, but I couldn't help it. 1 night per week, starting in 7 days, we were going to sleep alone. The first time it had been mentioned, I'd thrown a fucking fit, had used my concern for my girl to mask my extremely palpable disdain for the suggestion. Truthfully, it had shitloads of merit. We'd never know if our minds were healing if we kept using each other to bandage over the wound. We had to know if there'd be dreams. But I was in no fucking hurry to find out. So what if we were hiding? Who was it hurting? Eventually, I'd grown weary and exasperated with hearing how necessary it was, so my tantrum was short-lived. Bella had agreed, so fucking blinded by her thirst for recovery, that she'd never even shown an ounce of worry over it. There was a trace of bitterness, on my part, that I battled to shove away. I didn't want to be a selfish prick, especially towards something that was obviously important. I knew better now than to think she'd leave me behind. I realized that she loved me, and, to her, I would still be the most important person in her life. It wasn't insecurity that drove my fear. I was worried. Things were perfect, as is. Unfortunately, it hadn't been about me. If my girl really wanted to know if she could sleep alone, then so fucking be it. I kept my fucking mouth shut. I just wished this one thing could remain, could be forever ours, untouchable and sacred. Luckily, I still had a full week before we were forced to serve that sentence, and today's agenda was the only thing I wanted to think about. It was a stark contrast to that other deadline. Instead of looming, this one skipped through the door with a shit-eating grin on its face. My pencil ran over the crisp, white page of a new sketchbook, pressing into the fibers with the sweeps of my hand. It seemed so fucking simple and automatic to me. See something, focus, mimic, tweak, accommodate, refine. Maybe in some other life, I could have found the same enjoyment from something like music here. Focus, mimic, tweak, accommodate, refine. Fuck. Why was I thinking about this shit? I was trying to get laid, damn it. With a sigh, I peeked up from my sketch, only just realizing that I'd already completed half of her face. Scant rays of sun shone through her curled hair, accentuating the red highlights at her tips as she furrowed her brow down at the book in her lap. The grass was browner now since winter had come and gone, and I was glad that the warmth I'd expected for the day was holding up. I checked forecasts for the entire week to choose the right time to come out here. The bubbling of the nearby river and the sway of the grass made the atmosphere feel comfortable. "You look," I tilted my head and frowned at her expression as she leaned against the tree in front of me, feet curled beneath her, contemplative. Contemplative wasn't necessarily my plan for the day. We were always fucking contemplative. I was sick and tired of being lost inside my head and thoughts. I wanted to just fucking be. I wished that I could turn my thoughts off, if only for one afternoon, and simply think of nothing. This is why drugs win. After the grueling winter, this was a break we'd needed, reaping the benefits, and all that.
She
hummed, pursing her lips as she finally met my gaze. A wayward lock of her shiny fucking curls fluttered with the breeze, and stuck to her lips, shiny with the pink, glossy shit that Alice had applied hours ago.
"Would you ever use a toaster?"
she asked randomly, her eyes wandering the area, as she contemplated. Quirking a brow, I answered, "Well, it is the only appliance I can safely and successfully use." She nodded, and sent me this relieved look, jotting something down quickly. "What's this for?" I asked as I returned my eyes to the drawing. I decided that lock of gloss-glued hair was a must.
"I'm making a list for the apartment,"
she answered in an absent murmur.
"You know how Carlisle never gave us a budget, or really any limit whatsoever? Well, yeah. I'm kind of taking advantage of that,"
she explained, with only a hint of shame in her voice. I smirked. Bella fucking loved the idea of us having our own place, after getting over the initial freakout. Admittedly, she had been dwelling on it ever since we'd gotten the acceptance letters a week ago, but in a different, far more acceptable way. She'd somehow contracted the infection of designing from Esme and Alice, and firmly refused to let anyone have any say in the state of our affairs unless it was her, or me. I sighed. My girl was so fucking cute when she got obsessive-compulsive over shit. As far as housing went, there had been suggestions for complete isolation, mostly from Esme and Alice, and some for just going the dorm route anyways, mostly from Carlisle and Jez throwing her to the sharks now so that she'd be able to handle the crowded college situation a little better. We compromised, and decided to go the route of a spacious yet modest apartment. That way, there was isolation when we needed that shit, and yet there were still people everywhere. And yet, I was still sitting here in the grass frowning, because this hadn't been a planned discussion for the day either. Can't we save that bullshit for later? I sighed dramatically. We have 6 months. Her lack of attention was seriously ruining my smooth operator moment. Glancing up to meet my gaze, she gnawed on her lip, and tapped her pen against the paper.
"I don't want to forget anything,"
she worried, squinting her eyes, as she looked to the sky, and pondered.
"Like, I don't drink coffee, so I wouldn't need a coffee maker, but then what if I decide to like it later, and I wake up one morning and want coffee, but I have no way to make it?"
Her eyes were narrowed, yet shifty, her shoulders anxious and stiff. Sensing her tension, I scooted closer to her, reaching out to grab her hand. I was really fucking startled when her whole body flinched. In a high, screeching tone, she persisted with wide eyes, gazing at me.
"Coffee comes in like a million different flavors. I don't even know what kind I'll like. What if I get something gross, and—"
"Bella." I stopped her with an upturned palm, and a wrinkled nose. "There must be something like 1,000 Starbucks in Seattle, okay? I can just go buy you a motherfucking coffee, whenever." "This is no big deal," I trailed off in confusion, questioning her with my eyes as her mouth snapped shut. Then she suddenly continued with a breathless ramble.
"And then there's travel. I mean, how am I going to get around? Is everything within walking distance? Or should I save for a car?"
"Fuck, Bella, we'll have the Volvo," I interrupted with raised eyebrows. Now, it felt like she was just making up shit to fret over. As if we didn't have plenty already.
"No, Edward. You'll have the Volvo. But what if you're gone, or—"
"I won't ever be gone," I argued incredulously.
"You don't know that,"
she exclaimed, throwing her hands in the air. Her curls bounced around her shoulders, falling over her modest cleavage, and drawing my eyes to her necklace, nestled warmly in the crevice created by her Alice-approved push-up bra. Something was off, and I knew it. We had so much time to plan and prepare for the move that it shouldn't have been sinking in like this yet. Even in therapy, we'd already begun lengthy, and admittedly, really fucking boring discussions